Bitcoin is also, I believe, in a secular bull market wave. Now, bring that context into the more narrow, like 2025. Within a bull market wave, you've also like it's a fractal. You've got smaller bull waves, and then bear market retracements, and then ultimately resuming the underlying broader primary trend, if you can call it that, like a bull market trend. Um, and I think there's something I want to call out this week. I think this didn't even show up on the radar for like your mainstream financial media, like your CNBCs, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, that I will cite for your indicator of where your C-suite and chief investment officers, those type of people wearing the suits and allocating portfolios will see things. This story didn't even rise to that occasion, right? Or rise to those headlines. You have to go into the Bitcoin sphere or the kind of crypto sphere to follow this Bitcoin Treasury firm development we saw this week, but really a bear sell-off that's been undergoing since June, right? And that's one of these Bitcoin Treasury companies. You've probably heard of them at this point. This one's Nakamoto. It's it's basically run and sponsored by the same people who organize the Bitcoin conferences. They have a venture investing arm. They've been in Bitcoin and in the space for, most of them 10 plus years. So they're OGs, as you would call them, as the kids would call them these days. So what's happened with this specific Bitcoin treasury company, and there have been several of them launched, really with the same strategy as the MicroStrategy playbook, or as it's called now, strategy, right? They're copy and pasting strategy, which is we're going to acquire Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They're going to hold it as an asset, or view it as a reserve asset, and then they're going to fund most of them. The capital strategy is with the capital side of your balance sheet, the liabilities and equity. You're going to use credit liabilities. You're going to issue credit to buy more Bitcoin, right? And that's what you've seen. It's kind of been the playbook for almost all of these Bitcoin treasury companies, right? That's in general, that's the strategy. And while strategy's executed on it well, it's been, the one of the best, if not the best performer in the S&P mid cap indices it sits in. Um, Not all of these Bitcoin treasury companies are created equal in their abilities to really execute on in the same way that strategy has been able to. One, just because of the core business, right? Strategy has that operating company. They have 20 years of track record. They started with cash and equivalents, uh, position that they built up from their retained earnings over 25 years. That a lot of these startups aren't beginning with from a cold start. And so what we've seen with Nakamoto, announced it was coming with a Bitcoin treasury company for a SPAC merger with this Kindly MD entity. For all intents and purposes, completely irrelevant, just some little healthcare operation in Utah. Doesn't matter as an operating company. But that really rode the wave of kind of euphoria that this Bitcoin treasury company phenomenon was getting from retail investors primarily in the secondary market. So its share price just ran up from $2 roughly before the merger was announced to high 20s, right? For essentially a 10x in a very short window, which is a spectacular return in that type of condensed time frame. Um, and then you also had the tail end of the Bitcoin conference in Vegas for kind of the U.S. or North American focused Bitcoin conference. And there's multiple of these. Like every quarter, there will be one of these rotating around the globe. Um, but you also had a huge kind of tailwind of bullishness from just promotion at the conference itself. So that kind of bull wave, that you can see it in the chart, just massive positive sentiment and euphoria heading into this thing by mid-June. But the air has been gradually kind of being let out of the balloon. Starting from mid-June, that bullishness couldn't maintain itself, like by definition. Like the capital flows, eventually after that news and just the rush in from hot money dries up. Eventually, the price can't sustain itself and it starts to draw down. And that's exactly what you've been seeing with the NAKA NAKA shares since really mid-July. It became apparent as price wasn't going to be able to hold up and sustain itself at those very lofty valuations it reached, you know, at the terminal phase of the May-June euphoria, right? And so you've seen a contraction of basically like 95% in that NAKA share from the June highs. If you look at where the volume was, where's all the buying? Well, it's clearly a lot of volume right now, like selling. There's a lot of trading taking place in this name. But really the retail buying, the public buying was coming in May, June at those highs, right? So what I'm saying here, like if you think about Bitcoin cycles, what everybody's gotten used to, 2012, 2016, 2020, et cetera, those halving cycles, those 4-year timelines, every one of those, every Bitcoiner knows you see a 80, 85, 90% drawdown, as the euphoria kind of like those capital flows dry up, and you see that correction taking place. We're just seeing that in the Bitcoin Treasury company space, like that phenomenon is playing itself out. However, Bitcoin itself, while there's been liquidity taking definitely since that all-time high, probably is it 5 weeks ago when it hit like 122,000 ish, that ballpark, low 120K range. It's been going through like a mini consolidation, but there's no collapse, right? It got down to 108,000. If you're in Bitcoin though, that's nothing, right? Like a 10% drawdown thereabouts, like that's a the not even enough to cause a flinch, right? As opposed to now those levels being added on top of Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin Treasury company is like think about it, it's capital, kind of it's a capital strategy on top of Bitcoin itself. You're seeing the volatility now show up on those outer layers. Doesn't mean you're not going to see, or you're going to see this in all of the Bitcoin Treasury companies, but the Bitcoin Treasury companies, including MicroStrategy, MSTR, their results have been kind of softened. You can see it in the charts since July, from my standpoint as a technical reader. Now, for setting the broader context of where is Bitcoin in this primary bull market wave? Are we done? Like, was 122K the top? Time will tell. But in a surprising way, I think this is actually good for extending that bull cycle in Bitcoin itself, like spot Bitcoin, the FX exchange rate. Why? You're rinsing out the most speculative capital flows, like took massive losses here. Like for the people who got greedy, they came in late, they bought in May, they bought in June on, this Bitcoin Treasury company. It's capital destruction, they just took, and, unfortunate, but this is Darwinian market competition in action. I mean, there's certain things to go on I don't want to touch here as you dive deep, as far as insiders, et cetera. But by rinsing out the speculative froth, this actually, in my opinion, part of a mini consolidation on the zoomed out Bitcoin chart for this cycle. This actually helps extend the cycle and go further. And I know that's something that in the Bitcoin sentiment itself is not kind of landing in the messaging right now, as things like this are like what's going on in the NAKA equity trading is taking front and center. Or the other topic is this core versus knots debate, everybody arguing over filters, all of that. If you think about the bull market, this is actually a very good thing to take a consolidation here. It extends your ability. It allows the Bitcoin supply to move into longer term holders or longer, stronger hands, and ultimately go further and farther on a less volatile, chart on the underlying asset itself. So the other thing you're hearing for sentiment as well is just Bitcoin in the broader market context. You're seeing certain things like gold breaking out, breaking through that $3,500 level, trading $3,600, $3,700. Doesn't look like it's stopping at all. You're seeing the same thing in metals, silver, platinum, etc. And you're seeing equity markets generally hold up. So Nasdaq, S&P 500, setting at all-time highs on almost couple of times a week basis here these last few weeks. It would seem they're still hitting, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is not hit an all-time high in 6 weeks. That's definitely weighing on sentiment. But from my perspective, this looks actually like, from a cycle perspective, this development for the Bitcoin Treasury companies running out of steam here. It looks like for at least the weeks or months, short-term type of time frame. That's, in a weird way, I know it's counterintuitive, but from a trading perspective, looks like a positive to me. Another note here, you're seeing, this is an article from the block today, 1 in 4 of these Bitcoin Treasury companies is now trading below their Bitcoin holdings value. And this is where, you hear the market, right? Or the influencers on YouTube and X, like it's all about MNAV, right? Multiple on net asset value, or Bitcoin yield. That impacts the narrative right now when, some of these start to trade below par, if you will, or that MNAV of 1.
It can go the
Same
opposite
thing.
way very fast when you get below that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's similar thing for actual like operating companies. I won't name names here, but there are companies who have adopted a Bitcoin treasury strategy who run some other business. They're doing, they're making the Bitcoin play in public market, in a public market context, different than the strategy framework. But you're seeing a lot of them start to trade at a discount as well, where the market value of the firm and its kind of going concern operations uh, calculates out to a negative value when taken into context of like market cap minus the Bitcoin Treasury holdings. So interesting things going on. I actually don't think this is a sign that the cycle is over. Bitcoin's dead. We topped at 122K. I think it's the opposite. You rinse some of the froth out, you get the most speculative buyers out. But my opinion, this thing is still moving forward in terms of its momentum in light of what seems like a pretty big drawdown for some of the people who thought they were getting Bitcoin exposure synthetically through these other Bitcoin treasury companies. So it really highlights the risk. Um, there are people who won't be tough to find influencers promoting the Bitcoin treasury offerings as well as their debt. But I think this is just one of those causes, step back for pause if you're an investor, whether you're retail or institutional, and realize that the Bitcoin treasury companies are not the same thing as Bitcoin. And each debt instrument you see offered, read the prospectus, because all of those things, know what you're buying. Don't just buy for a yield number, because it's that same thing you're saying. Bitcoin treasury companies are not Bitcoin. Understand your dollar credit instruments as well. But everything, as always in financial markets, it's you're in charge of doing your own due diligence. But let this example, hopefully, um, you weren't hurt as one of the parties who lost or took capital losses on, say, this trade. But let it be concerned, learn from other people's pain, and do your due diligence, know what you're buying, and all the above. But yeah, ultimately, it's a good time in a cycle to be an investor against the grain when you see events like this. These are actually kind of informative from a technical perspective or a trader's perspective of potential entry points if you're looking to be long. Doesn't mean buy Nakamoto. That's not what I'm saying. But use this as a kind of the counter-cyclical framework, the Warren Buffett quote: "You want to be the buyer when there's blood in the streets." Well, you want to be a buyer when sentiment is low, buy low, sell high, all of those things. Not making any recommendation or advice for any security or any asset in general, but just that general framework. Want to leave our audience, keep those things in mind. But in my perspective, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin for the long run.